Hi, my name is Byron Martin here at Logee's Greenhouses, and today, May 2020, we are in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and our retail greenhouses, which many people come to visit, are closed. But we're going to show you what's going on inside in the middle of May and look at some of the plants that are blooming. This greenhouse right here is the original greenhouse that started the business in 1892. This was what my grandfather started growing cut flowers in those years, and it's still with us today. So let's go look and see what we've got going on inside. So as you can see, this greenhouse actually at one time was called the Fern House, and we still have some of our old specimens in here, but over the years it's morphed into many things. We have our Strongylodon vine, which is hanging down here in front of us. At this time of year, the Medinilla or magnifica, which is probably one of the more showy Medinillas, although many in the genus are quite showy, is in full bloom. We have quite a few specimens of that around the greenhouses now. You see the buds coming on. It's one of those plants that's very, very long lasting, and it's a little tricky in terms of its culture, but if you can get it to grow, it gives what we call a lot of mileage in terms of flowering potential. Over in the corner there, and if we can see it, we have some pineapples that are starting to ripen. This is some that the staff has cultured over the years. They go into fruit about every 2 years for us, and then the pineapples are harvested and new ones sprout out of the base. We have one of our short cycle bananas here that's just recovering from its last fruiting cycle, and that plant will actually grow it up to the ceiling on us, which we have to kind of trim back the growth a little bit. And this is a very interesting plant on the side here. This is actually Cinnamomum zeylanicum, and this is actually the true cinnamon. You can see the foliage on it. It's beautiful pink color to it as the juvenile foliage comes out and as it ages. The interesting thing is, and this plant's been here for many years, it's kind of a hard plant for us to propagate, but if you take a stem off and you actually scrape it, it has a rich, rich smell to it. This is not generally used as commercial cinnamon. There's another species of cinnamon is a little bit faster growing, but this has actually more aromatics than our commercial cinnamon does. And it's a great plant. It's not necessarily that easy to grow in containers. It has some issues, but if you're a challenging gardener, it's a great plant to try. Oh, we have one of our small bananas. This is Musa ladyfinger, dwarf ladyfinger. And this is as big as it gets. This has got to be the smallest banana that is grown in containers that we have ever found, and actually fruits very well. And then over on the back side here, if I can step into the bed a bit, you can see our Strongylodon vine, this is its flowering time right now. It probably has one of the wildest colors in terms of floral color of any plant that we grow, and that's really close to turquoise. So right here we have our snowflake plant. You can see the leaf going up through. It kind of looks like a snowflake, very cut leaves. This is Trevesia palmata, and there's several forms of this. This is actually the one that has the best leaves to it. There's another one sold in the trade where there's not so much segmentation in the leaf. There's our Philodendron verrucosum. This is a very popular philodendron at the moment. You can see the beautiful leaves on it. It's a Central and South American jungle philodendron, and these are getting to be about mature size on it. Very iridescent, the colors on that, particularly in the juvenile leaves as you can see them, or the younger leaves as you can see them coming through here. Here's our Calliandra. This is a great plant that flowers and flowers and flowers. It's always in bloom for us. This plant has been pruned back quite a bit, but it's quite old. We've had it in a pot for a number of years. There's actually two forms of this. There's this pink one with a relatively large flower, and there's a smaller red one. They're probably different species, but in the trade, all of them are considered Calliandra emarginata. Great plant for a bright sunny spot, and a lot of the Calliandras can be very big and bushy and kind of wild. This one is very contained, so for those people that are growing flowering plants in windowsills and in sunny spots and want a contained but ever blooming houseplant, this makes a great one. You put it out for the summertime also. There's our Blechnum gibbum, which is I call it the dwarf tree fern. You can see here, this is really old. It's been growing here for years, and that's as big as it gets. Critical in its culture, though, is to keep it really evenly moist. I mean, if you dry it out, it gets hurt very badly, and the leaves get damaged, and it takes a while for them to recover. Here's some more of our Staghorn ferns. This is Willinkii, which is really a beautiful variety of Platycerium. Has that kind of silver gray foliage to it. You know, never gets really that big, but it's really a great plant. And there's another specimen up there, which is Lemonii. That is actually a hybrid of Willinkii. You see it's a little bit silver, more silver gray, but again, it's a very contained plant, so that makes it great for containers. Here we have the final blooming here of our Petrea. We actually call it a borea, but it probably is not. It's not volubilis, the more common one. It has a little lighter colored flower to it, and it's much freer blooming for us in the greenhouses here than volubilis. Volubilis you often see in South Florida and tropical areas, and they put on quite a show, but here in the Northeast, it doesn't actually flower as freely as this particular one, which, as I mentioned, we call this a borea, although I think it's mislabeled. Oh, we have right here the final flowering of our Cantua. This is Cantua buxifolia, sacred flower of the Incas. It's really probably not a great house plant. It's something you really need a conservatory to grow it in. But when it's in bloom and it's just going out of cycle, it really puts on quite a show. It also has a propensity for spider mites, so you have to really stay after it. The foliage on this looks pretty good. It's one of those weeping plants that grows at very high elevation, can take it quite chilly. Winter blooming, short day length is what stimulates the flowers on it. Right here we have our double red bougainvillea. This is actually a great bougainvillea. I always say if you're going to grow bougainvilleas, grow the doubles, because they don't drop their flowers. The flowers actually fade. You can see right here the colors are fading on the top here, and you literally have to deadhead them. They will just hang on there and turn kind of a grayish color. You see some of the older flowers here that have started to change color, but it puts on a great show, and these big puffs of flowers come out of it. It's one of the more vining types of bougainvillea, so you have to usually that in a stake or a trellis or something like that. Wouldn't consider it all that bushy in form. And right here we have well, it's not the end of it, but it's getting close. This is our red passion flower, Passiflora miniata. It's probably one of the brightest passion flowers that we grow in our collection. There's a lot of really nice looking ones, but this one really is brilliant red, and it flowers all winter for us. And even into the summer some, I see some tiny little buds right there starting to emerge. So it hasn't really shut down, but it's the winter time, the short days of winter that actually bring it into its fullest bloom. By the time we get to the height of summer though, it'll be all over. There's our, the very beginning of the Petrea vitex bambusatorum that's coming into flower. This is a summer blooming vine, and it's a really rapid grower. I mean, this one little basket here by the end of the season will just cover this whole area. And these flowers, they jangle down and they go down and down and down and down and down and down. They just keep on flowering off. It's very showy. Has these kind of yellowish flowers that are fairly bright, and there's bracts on them with little flowerets that come out from inside. Speaking of yellow, we have our Alamander, Cathotica, William's eye, and this has been in the greenhouses probably since the 1920s or 1930s. The original vine is right here. You can see it right here coming up out of the ground. It's planted in the ground. And it really loves it in this greenhouse. It's a warm spot, and the light level is very good. The only thing is, because it's in the ground, we have to do a lot of pruning on it. I mean, the plant would literally take over if we let it go on its own. But it's gone through a pruning, and it's just coming into flower again. And it'll flower for us. It pretty much flowers year-round. There's not a day you can't come in here and find a bloom. But from now on, it's going to be heavy in terms of flower production. There's our Rondelletia leucophila. This again is a short day bloomer, winter bloomer for us, and it's just, well, it looks like there's still some buds coming, but it'll be out of flower here in another month or so. And then what we do is we prune it back heavy, and we wait for late summer to come, and we give it one more pruning, and then we go back into a flower production on it for the wintertime, color. The very end of winter, we're speaking of winter, this is Manettia, which is actually the candy corn vine. And this, again, we were talking about winter. This is the very end of its flowering cycle. You can see up here there's new growth coming, but we don't have bud initiation along the tips there, so it's pretty much coming to the end. But it's a great indoor plant. It's been used for many years for winter color. It does need a fair amount of sun, though. It's not really a shade-loving plant. And one of the brightest flowers in our collection that has always been around, and customers and all of us here love this. This is Hibiscus The Path. There are many, many Hibiscus rosa sinensis cultivars that we call showy, large flowers. For whatever reason, and I guess there's a good reason, you look at the flower, it has been a plant that has never lost favor. Many of the cultivars we have go on for a while, and then people move on from other ones. But the Path has been one that has sustained itself for at least the last 40 years. The interesting thing is that many of the showy hibiscus don't last that long. They go into a decline. The Path has had that much strength that it's stayed with us for those many decades. There's our yellow Crossandra. This is Crossandra lutea. And Crossandras are great houseplants. They flower under lower light. And there's this yellow one, there's a common orange one, Infundibulformis, and there's actually a red form of it, which is a little bit weedier. But this actually goes on and on and on and on. The only time we don't see it flower is when it gets too big and we have to cut it back, or in the case that we're propagating off of it and we have to prune it. Here's a Hawaiian native. This is the Metrosideros polymorpha. Cherry Red is the cultivar name on this. The folks at Hawaiian native plants on Maui hybridize this, and they've done quite a bit of work on it. It's a pretty good bloomer here in Connecticut, not as good as on Hawaii, and for us it flowers only at this time of year, where in Hawaii you can go there and you can always find blooms on it throughout the year. Here's a plant, and these are our small plants that we ship and sell, but this is a great plant if you want color and it never ends. And this is Parvonia multiflora, which is in the hibiscus family. It's the Malvaceae. The showy part of the calyx is at the bottom here, but then it has this strange purple stamens that come out and kind of a whorl in the middle that's kind of dark colored. And you can see all the buds coming up, and it never stops. It never stops. And it'll go through the dark of winter. It'll go into coal houses, greenhouses, where you'd think everything would stop, and the plant just keeps on flowering. The only thing that stops it from flowering here at Logee's greenhouses is the pruning shears that cut it back when it gets too big. And it can actually be maintained and at quite many different sizes. You could easily keep it only a little bit bigger than this with a pair of pruning shears, cut it back, even to the point where there's leafless stems on it. It sprouts out, goes right back into growth, and starts flowering pretty much immediately. It has, as I mentioned before, it has a really high mileage in terms of its flower production. This is one of the Thunberger hybrids related to a lot of Black-Eyed Susan, called Sun Lady. We've grown a lot of them over the years, and I think Sun Lady pretty much has outdone them all. It's just a great standby for color throughout the year, wintertime, summertime, or whatever. Now there's a flowering. This is actually a little bit out of cycle here. This is Radimacara, And this is a hybrid that we got in. But Radimacaras are really great indoor plants because they can be used as foliage, but also there's a couple of varieties, this hybrid and Radimacara coming. Both of those are actually the flowering forms of this. Although some of them, as I mentioned, are used for foliage, this actually can be used as a flowering plant. And they do quite well under lower light in terms of their blooming. So it's probably in their native habitat. They can grow a little bit on the understory side of the tropical jungles or forests and still produce flowers. Some more of our Medinillas here in bloom, which are, you know, the Showy Medinilla with its bracts and pink flowers. There's a Thunberger. We were just talking about Sun Lady. There's one called Fairy Moon. This is a shrubby one, which is actually related to Thunberger erector. You can see the bicolored flowers on it. It's a fairly good bloomer. It's a little bit tricky in terms of growing it as a houseplant because it is a big grower. The species erector probably would be a better choice for that. Oh, and we have here just the beginning of our Logee variegata. This is the sweet almond plant, and the flowers are really, really fragrant, intensely fragrant. They smell sort of like an almond. It's a plant that grows very fast and flowers very freely in the summertime. Here in the Northeast, it kind of goes into a bit of a decline. In the summertime, it just covers itself with flowers. This plant is just beginning to go into that cycle of bloom and growth. Here we have a plant that's commonly used in tropical horticulture for landscaping. This is an Ixora, and this is a variety called Javanica, which is different than most Ixoras that you find in the trade. And in many ways, it's much better as a container plant and as a house plant. It grows a little bit faster. The root system is a little bit stronger, and it flowers for us under lower light over a longer period of time. So we've grown many Ixoras over the years, some of the dwarf ones, the standard ones, to even some of the very large flowering ones. This one has outperformed, in our greenhouses, this one has outperformed them all in terms of flower production and vigor in terms of growth. Well, thank you for watching today. There's a little bit of the inside of Logee's greenhouses in the middle of May 2020. Stay tuned for part 2 of the walking tour of Logee's greenhouses, coming soon. If you'd like more information, you can visit us at logees.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel.